So today I got done skating my 8 miles just now. It was the first time I skated in about a week and a half, and I don't really know why. I'm not sure how that happened. As I mentioned to one of my friends last night, I was pretty addicted most of the time. I know there were 2 platelet donations in that time, which slowed me down a little bit, and then it was like in the 90s, and I think I had Gracie some of the evenings, and then I just wasn't feeling it. So for whatever reason, it was about a week and a half, and that was unacceptable. So I did that just now. It was good, as always. I've never had a skate that I've regretted. No matter how much I might sometimes drag my feet about wanting to, and that's probably should have sucked it up a couple of those 90-degree days when I could have. Because by the time it's like, it doesn't get dark till what, like 9:30, 10 o'clock? So, yeah, it's not like there's really any reason on that end not to. I can wait later. That's no big deal. I was skating I was skating after dark when it was winter, and freaking daylight savings time had me all jacked up. Out there at like 6:30 and it's dark. But they still have lots of street lights, so it was no big deal. Yeah. Last night was kind of a ordeal, and I knew I wanted to get on here and talk about it a little bit, and then just didn't really have the opportunity until now. I mean, I could have if I skipped my skate, but I'm not skipping my skate. But yeah, there was some drama, and it's kind of funny because there's been a lot lately where I have seen my family members just completely plow through my boundaries that I'm setting and trying to maintain for myself, for exactly that purpose, because they have a nice tendency to plow through boundaries and not pay any attention to them at all because they don't apply, right? And I'm finding as I get better about pushing back and holding my boundaries in place, it makes them pissy. And that's kind of part of the thing that was happening. So I'm trying to even figure out where it really began. I don't think I finished that thought. With the fact that they do plow through boundaries, I have been of the mind lately that when the time comes that I do have a kid, I'm not really confident that I'm going to want them to have access to the child, because I've seen how they are with Gracie, and okay, not that they're specifically intentionally difficult with her, but okay, I can tell that my mom has been frustrated many times because shame and guilt do not work on the autistic child like they did on me and my brother. And I have also said on here before many times that I am thankful for that fact. That she, I can watch my mom say or do things and try to make Gracie feel bad about it to guilt her into feeling bad, and she just doesn't get it. It's like, oh, thank God. Because that whole shame and guilt was like a very soul-crushing thing for me when I was growing up. And on that end, I have long said that, it ends with me. I'm not passing that on to any children that I may have. I refuse to do that. And I said back in high school that if I could not heal from the wounds that I was picking up from this journey, then I would not have kids ever. And I feel like I'm finally at a point in the past several months where like I kind of feel that thawing out, and like I feel like I have done a huge amount of work. Obviously there's always still work to be done, but I've still done a lot. And I feel like I'm finally at a place where I could consider it and not feel like I'm going to unintentionally revert back to old habits, just because that's what's familiar, and I feel like I was thinking about this whole using my voice journey. And I've kind of been wondering how much further the whole YouTube thing's going to go. I was thinking as I was skating today that I feel like this part of the journey has been specifically to voice the pain and trauma that I have experienced, to witness them again and allow them to be purged from my system. And I feel like that's the big thing with the YouTube journey. And then every now and then I'll have like a tarot video that I watch, and I'll comment something on it, and then somebody, maybe they find my channel, or maybe they just like something I said in the comment. But there was one last night that was like that, and what I felt like the way this person had responded to me was that she was basically saying that my story was one that needed to be shared, and she found a lot of similarities to her own story. And she shared parts of that I gathered were the parallels. And it just kind of made me think, it's like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing this, is to get it out of my system and allow others the space to find it and potentially see aspects of their own story reflected through the telling of mine. And I feel like, okay, I know I've said many, many times that I know I'm supposed to be writing too. Or maybe mainly, I don't know. I still feel like this is an important, this whole YouTube thing is an important aspect of it, whether it's long term or just for now. Cross that bridge when we get there. So, I feel like it definitely has its purpose right now, and at the very least, in what I've done here so far, I have done a lot of purging the stuff from my system and becoming stronger in setting and maintaining boundaries for myself, when it comes to my family and all that stuff. And even beyond that, like I've talked about the deal with the realization of how complicated the boundary issue even was when I could see it at 4 different levels. And the first level or the biggest, most far away version, or far away level, I guess, perspective, was looking at church beliefs that I had grown up in and how they affected my ability to have or maintain boundaries. And, the big thing there was that the church is really good at imposing its boundaries on everybody else and not being respectful of it. That's particularly the large grand entity, and because anybody that has experienced an extended time, or maybe not an extended time, any kind of time in church, or around people who are very adamant about how important their churchiness is, I think it's probably safe to assume that you understand there's a certain degree of which crossing boundaries is encouraged, because, well, we got to go save everybody, in the name of Jesus, we got to save the world. And yeah, so on that end, you're taught it's perfectly acceptable to cross people's boundaries, and then there's the whole victimization thing. So because Jesus died on the cross for your sins, then we have to believe that we're going to also experience this condemnation as well, because they hated him first, so they also hate us. So on that end, makes a nice setup for a very narcissistic dynamic. Because, okay, first, you're crossing boundaries right and left, and it's okay to do so. But then you're also the victim because Jesus was first. He was the first victim, right? But I'm pretty confident that anybody that gets the point of the actual Jesus message would not take that he was a victim and that he just wanted to be a victim and was forever a victim. Yay. That's not the point of it. As I've said many times, I think the whole purpose of the Jesus story, regardless of what you believe to have or not have happened as X, the purpose of it was to show that healing is possible, can be done, must be done to get to the next level. But, this entity that is the church made it into Jesus is this lone God figure, and you have to rely on him rely on his death to wash away your sins and therefore never heal. That's not not the point. Yeah. And I don't know where I was going with that one. Anyway. Yeah, that was the big level. The smaller, no, this fly buzzing my face does not mean I'm not supposed to tell these stories. It means it's trying to test me to see if it's important enough for me to keep going. And I do think it is, even if it annoys me momentarily. It did land on my nose very briefly, and now my nose itches. Anyway, beyond that, because that's obviously something that's going to piss a lot of people off. And I don't care. I'm kind of at the point now where it's like I have held in everything for fear of pissing people off, allowing people space to not like me. You know, I hated the idea of of allowing people not to like me. And it took me a really, really long time before it really set in that I don't want to be liked by everybody, because a lot of the people out there are just assholes and want it to be acceptable to be assholes and run over people's boundaries. So yeah, there's that. The next level was that with the whole ordeal with my dad. And that one, I've spoken to that many, many, many times on this channel, because that's basically where a lot of the healing that I've had to do comes in at, you know, and it's, you know, just all the ways where I have watched him cross my boundaries because the church is basically telling him that's what he has to do to save me. I have to be saved, and, you know, it's up to him to save me or whatever. You know, so he sends me bullshit that I don't want and that I have requested many times that he not send me. And, you know, my mom has also told him to leave me out of it. And he's continued to not. I think we have kind of simmered down on that end. You know, and then there was the next level where this one particular incident with my dad and the group text message that he sent that I was included in, I felt the need to say something. And when I said something, my brother freaked out. So at that level, you know, that one was probably the one that bothered me the most, because he got upset that I called my dad out in front of other people. But he completely sidestepped the fact that the only reason I said anything was because my dad had been requested to stop many, many times and had not stopped. You know, so in me saying something to stand up for myself and for my own boundaries, it made him freak out, because then maybe somebody thinks I'm making my dad look bad or whatever. It's like, that's not the point. The point is, he was crossing my boundaries, and I had to say something, because otherwise, I'm just allowing it to be okay to run over my boundaries, and I'm not okay with that. You know, I'm ready for that to be done. You know, and then the fly in the ointment level, or whatever, the one that really didn't particularly matter a huge amount, but was still kind of annoying, but made me think more than anything, was the guy that kind of pushed me on, do you really need to protect your boundaries that much? You know, and like making me question myself, making me second guess myself for the millionth time in my, well, I'm sure it's been way over a million at this point. I'm a pro at second guessing myself, which is, again, I think why this whole journey is so important for me now. And so the ordeal that came up most recently was, I'm trying to figure out where it even starts. You know, okay, I said that I don't really, at this point in time, have any desire to have my family to allow them the opportunity to perpetuate the cycles with any kids that I have, because I've done this work to heal all this drama and trauma and everything that has been continuously imposed upon me throughout my life. You know, and I'm not going to perpetuate it. I question how much I want them involved with my future family. Which I think is a big part of why I came to this point at being 40 years old and living back with my parents for the past 5 years since I got my divorce. Because I was never good with boundaries. I never understood them. I didn't understand how not setting them and maintaining them was hurting me. And so I was always wishy-washy because I didn't know that I needed to protect myself from people that were in my family. I didn't know that was the thing that was necessary. And like I've always had this weird sense of reading into situations beyond what's actually being said. And it used to freak my family out. I know that. Because I think I saw that in my grandfather a few times when I was really young. And because of that, that was a big part of why I got essentially ran over trying to heal the wounds of others, and not understanding back then that just because I could see the wounds and know them for what they were didn't mean they were mine to take on. And so I tried to take them on, and that's not helpful. I mentioned at some point in time, I think, if I didn't mention it here, I'll mention it here anyway. Because that's what I do. As it comes to mind, I'm just bringing it up again. I don't care how many times I've said it on the channel already, because chances are, wherever you come across any of my videos, it's going to be a first time for somebody, and I don't necessarily think that it's helpful to have to go through the whole bunch of them to understand where I'm coming from, or how I got to where I was with any of that. Now, what did I say? Okay. In the explanation, I briefly lost the point that I was trying to get to. So, there was something that I said in the class. Oh, okay. So, I don't remember if I said it here or not, but I did say it in the Wednesday night class that I was going to the God sign class that would talk about the connectedness of things and all that fun stuff. And one of the things I said, I think back in February, I think it was before my uncle passed away. And he was the first person of the series of deaths that have so far occurred this year. My mama actually had a former coworker and friend that passed away, and the funeral was Tuesday, or the viewing was Tuesday. I don't remember. Anyway, so there's another one. But that one wasn't close to me. It's just my mom was talking about her. So my uncle ended up in the hospital back in February. And when that came up, it was shortly after I got an abundance of things that seemed to suggest to me to pay attention to what season I was in, first off, and also kind of connecting the fact that there's so much more going on the spiritual side of things than we're aware here on the physical. And it dances through numbers, and I just saw 515 on the timer, which is my great grandma's number. I saw a little bit ago, I saw 5751 on a license plate. 57 is a family friend that passed away back in March, and 51 made me think of my dog, whose birthday was May 1st, and he died back in 2014. So it's like they're everywhere, literally everywhere. So I realized that I was in a season of endings, basically. And at the time I thought death, but I think it's more just endings, and there's just an active demonstration of all the different aspects of endings, types of endings, if you will. So my uncle, we had this family Christmas party in January with my dad's side of the family, and I think my mom asked him how he was doing, and he just starts firing off with, "Not a damn bit of good," and that was what stood out at the time. So then, in February, after because that was the way the man talked, everything was never good. And he ended up, my aunt couldn't wake him up, wasn't sure if he was in a diabetic coma or what was going on, and had to call 911 to get him taken to the hospital. And they didn't know what to do with him at that hospital that was local to them, and he ended up getting moved to another hospital. Anyway, I think for like the entire week, maybe week and a half that he was there, he wasn't in good shape, but he was aware of what was going on. And my parents went to visit him a couple times and said that he couldn't talk because they had things shoved down his throat, and at the same time they felt like he was aware of what was going on because he just laid there and occasionally a tear would fall down his cheek. Like, well, it's one of those things that has bothered me throughout my lifetime because I feel like I'm supposed to be able to help people heal. And I think a big part of that is through storytelling and the connections that I already have mentioned in this one. But it bothered me that I couldn't actively do something for my uncle and his family. He ended up dying on he and my aunt's 46th wedding anniversary or something. And apparently it was kind of weird because, their anniversary was the 11th, his birthday was the 14th, so it's that's a big convergence of events in a short span of time. But I think my mom said that my aunt told him on their anniversary that if he needed to go, it was okay. But sorry, here I go again. That whole healing thing really bothered me that week because it's I feel like I'm supposed to be able to do something to help, but I can't do anything on this one, right? So where are they going with that? Oh, what I said to the class was that it had been made clear to me that you can't take somebody else's lessons. Like, you don't know what they signed up to learn in this lifetime. And you can't just fix things for people who, I mean, you don't know what they're here to learn. You can't get in the middle of that stuff. That's not your place, you know. And that was the big lesson that week. Is, yes, I'm here to help people heal, but that's not the way that's meant to be done. And wasn't without difficulty, I think, at least initially, until I've been seeing how that's kind of playing out in other aspects. You know, like my grandfather started treatment for leukemia, I think around 16 years ago. And in the time that he went through treatment, and okay, before that, like the time that he initially had it, it was, this is going to be what kills me. This is going to be what kills me. Then, after he was treated for it and it went away for a while, there was no gratitude about, hey, it didn't kill me. It was still the next thing, this is going to kill me. This is going to be what kills me, you know? And then he ended up with lung cancer and then got treated for that. And I think that one's not a problem now. But it's always been, this is going to be what kills me. This is going to be what kills me. Well, the leukemia is back now, and treatments are not going especially easy. And it's like, how could you expect anything different? You never once appreciated the fact that it didn't kill you the last time, or the first time that you said it was going to. You just kept looking for the next thing that's going to kill you. And, you know, that's been, like, ever since I was 7 and my great-grandpa died. My great-grandpa was 77 and I was 7, so it's 777. That just now occurred to me too. Interesting. Anyway, random. So ever since then, every single birthday anybody's had, any sort of gathering for anything, he's always hijacking the conversation to talk about when he's going to die or how he's going to die or whatever. It's like, what's the point? It's like, in all the years of worrying about dying, he's never once lived, you know, and that's unfortunate. How sad is that to think that, you know, he's going to be 85 in August and he's never lived because he spent so much time worrying about dying. And, you know, my mom would make the excuse that, well, his mom died, I think, at 42 of colon cancer. And obviously he was traumatized from that one, you know, and it's just, you know, that's literally what I remember is every single gathering of any sort getting hijacked to talk about his death. It's like, that's not fun for anybody, you know, and I remember thinking, why are we talking about his death on my birthday? But of course, when I was younger, I wasn't going to speak up because I was always shamed to keep me from using my voice because the things I said, people didn't appreciate. And I realize now that mostly that's because I've had the tendency to call out the energies, like I'm speaking with the energies that are involved and seeing beyond the actual situation itself. So when it came to getting bullied, I could see the reasons that the people who were bullying me were doing so. You know, it was always a place of pain because maybe their dad didn't want anything to do with them or whatever, you know, or the parents were getting divorced and whatever, that kind of stuff. You know, and it was always like, because I understood that, I allowed them to just treat me like shit. And mostly not even allowing myself the space to take the time to realize that I did not deserve the stuff that was being said about me. I just, nobody was there to help me understand any of that. So, yeah. So anyway, the ordeal. The most recent one, my mom is pissy because my brother and sister-in-law don't seem to want my niece to go with her and my dad camping. Obviously, with what I've said so far, you'll understand that I completely understand that, and especially since a lot of the feelings I have about my dad and not wanting him to have anything to do with my children is because of what I've seen him say or do around her. And, it's as simple as she says something to get a reaction because it's at least some kind of attention from Papaw, even if not good attention, and he feeds into it by having a temper tantrum like a grown-ass child. And so I understand why they wouldn't want their kid around that, because I also don't want my kids around that. I just don't have any kids right now. The other thing was there was some kind of story yesterday, I think. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. My mom, she loves the bad news or the crappy shit that comes up on the news sites for her email and all this crap. And there was some ordeal about a local commissioner or something that took a married woman on some kind of trip to load her up with booze, and then she cried rape or whatever, and she was hell-bent on telling my dad this story. And I was like, this already, before she got to any of the details, I said that this does not sound like something that Gracie needs to hear. So she gets off of her chair at the computer, or at the kitchen table, at her computer, and goes over to the couch to loudly whisper it to my dad, because she's really trying to get me to hear it too, and I don't give a shit. I don't want to hear it, and I was like, that's still really loud. She can still hear you. And Gracie's like, I can still hear you. And of course she tells him, and then he's just talking like normal, and well, then she's gonna cry rape and blah blah blah. It's like, so then Gracie's mom and dad come in, not knowing that this whole thing has just gone about, and my mom is sitting back at her computer at this point, and she's like, hey, I have to tell you this thing. I mean, she didn't say that, but that's what it felt like. The energetic thing, And she proceeds to, like, she wasn't quitting. And granted, my brother and sister-in-law didn't say, don't really care, stop, just stop. They just let her do her thing because they saw she wasn't going to quit without it. So then, of course, mom's telling her story happily that she's being able to say it in front of the child that I was just trying to deflect it from, so the child didn't have to hear it, and the child hears it a couple times anyway. Already annoyed on that end, and then they leave, and I don't remember at what point, but I will say the problem that I have with this next part is that, okay, part of the problem is that it had nothing to do with being asked in any way. You know, Mom demanded that I was going to be the one to make dinner. And she already had the stuff. This is what we're having. All I got to do is put it together. Well, then she's got all her recipes on her computer, so she's supposed to find it. Well, I didn't immediately do anything. I kind of walked off from it then. And I'm wanting to say she went and I don't know what she was doing in that time. Anyway, before the recipe part, I went back to my office and was just like, shouldn't ask, this is really irritating, but I'm hungry, so I'm probably going to do it anyway. But it still pissed me off that I hadn't been asked. You know, she just demanded, this is what's going to happen. And because of the whole boundary thing. You know, and this is why boundaries are so important for me now. You know, and so it finally got to the point where I was hungry and decided to go put them together. They're like sliders, so it's not like any big deal. Just cut the Hawaiian rolls and throw them in the pan, put the cheese and the ham and all that crap on them. And then there were some other things, you know, for that part. I said, where's the recipe? How long what's the temperature these are supposed to go in on? You know, how long do they go in? All this crap. Because, okay, the recipe for the sauce that goes over the top of it or whatever. And she has the tendency to get very sidetracked and wander off from anything she was doing. And I get being easily distracted and wandering off for things because God knows I do it enough. God knows my train of thought in any of these videos is not straight by any means. It's kind of spiraling, right? As I've talked about many times. The ever ongoing spiral. So she gets sidetracked, and then I went in the other room and then came back, and she threw the paper at me that had the information for the sauce or whatever. And so I did that, and I put them in, you know, and then she didn't tell me how long they were going in and all that crap. So it's like more tedious bullshit. Get them in the oven, turn the timer on, go back to my office because she's already dancing all over my nerves. And at some point I hear her book on her phone that she's always listening to. That's what she does, is listen to audiobooks, and then she'll write reviews so she can get more audiobooks to listen to. And yeah. So I hear that as she's going into her room. I figured she was just going into the bathroom, didn't think anything of it. And a few minutes later, my dad's like yelling because the timer was going off and nobody was doing anything with it, and he just shut it off and blah, blah, blah. And I get up and she was laying down. And I go, you know, uncover them because they've been covered with foil. And, you know, he's got the oven shut off, and you're supposed to, like, cook them another 5 to 10 minutes after, or when they're uncovered. You know, so I reset it for that, and then I go back in there, and it's like, you didn't say you weren't going to be in there. I left the room because you were in there next to it, and you did not say anything, you know, and it's like, okay. My brother and I had a conversation, I think, in the past week or two. It's like, do you ever feel like we are older and more emotionally mature than our parents are? It's like, sometimes. It's like, really, just sometimes? I said, because I felt this my entire life. And he just kind of laughed at me, but, so then I got my food on a plate and went back to my office because it's like, not dealing with this bullshit. And then it was a whole thing because then I decided to have one more than I had left the room with. And so I stood by the kitchen. And so they moved the stuff off the table and said, well, there's table space. You could sit by us. And it's like, I just have this one. I'm almost done. And then as soon as I was done, I did the usual, I unload the dishwasher, and then sometimes I'll reload it depending on how much the stuff is bothering me, and sometimes I'll do part of it just to get the stuff that's immediately off the counter, or on the counter, off of the counter. But yeah, I was just kind of like, walk the hell away and deal with these people today. And then my mom and my brother bickering going back and forth, not really bickering, because just text messaging, because Mom really, really wants them to be, or Gracie to be able to go. Gracie had said she wanted to go. Then, my brother and sister-in-law like, I don't know, but not saying for sure, no, she can't go. Or just she doesn't want to because she just found out there's fireworks this weekend for their neighborhood, whatever. And at one point she says, did your brother talk to you about in the morning? And she said, never mind. And usually my mom goes over to sit with Gracie when my brother takes his wife to work. So then he can have his car and go to appointments or whatever during the day. And then he'll go pick her up, and sometimes Gracie will go, sometimes we have Gracie. If it's a special occasion, I will go over there, and it's not a problem. As long as somebody asks me, don't tell me this is what's happening, ask me, and I will probably go along with it. If you tell me, it's not going to go so well. And she started to go that route, and then said never mind. Now, she had an appointment today that I knew about, but the appointment wasn't until 12. Normally on those days, she still goes over there in the morning and all is well. Today she did not. And I kind of saw that happening, but it's like, you know what, I'm going to let it play out. And she said ahead of time that she was pretty sure if she didn't show up sometime, my brother would just take the kid with him. Well, that's ended up what happened, and it's just like, are you really just trying to give him another reason for why he shouldn't want her to hang out with you right now when you're acting like a freaking child, Anyway, so I thought, I knew I needed to get this whole story garbage out of my system. And I was thinking about that last night, and then I had this moment where I started getting a little wishy-washy on it. It's like, does it really serve a purpose? Is it really necessary? And, trying to process through this. And this video popped up on my YouTube thing. Like, I had gone on there to check something else, and this video popped up, and I don't remember what it said, but it got my attention. And I didn't even get past 5 minutes into it, but the very first 3 minutes, the voiceover says, or is talking about feeling rejected, and if you're somebody that's felt rejected throughout your lifetime, then how you should respond, rather than giving people more of yourself and your energy, is do the same thing to them. If they reject you, then you don't go out of your way to find something to reject them on. What you do is Don't give them the thought. Don't give them your energy. Just let it go. Allow yourself to feel the pain and disappointment of having felt that way. But what you're actually doing is mirroring back to them how they made you feel. And it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And yes, I do think it's necessary to put it out there to get it out of my system. I keep getting these messages that pop up talking about how a big part of my purpose is in helping others to heal toxic family cycles. It's like, that's what this is. It's needing the stuff out of my system, telling my story so that others can see how the stories I tell, they also understand, because in some way they have experienced them for themselves, and people can find healing through that. And I think it's very important that it's through speaking it rather than writing it, because, okay, when I write something, I go around and around with it. And I reread, constantly. Like, I try to edit as much as I can and make it sound good, make sure everything makes sense and is coherent, and there aren't any stupid little proofing issues, like, God. I haven't figured it. I don't know if I can edit my comments that I left on other people's videos on my phone. I haven't figured it out if I can do that. So when I reread the comment that I posted last night, normally I would have gone back and reread it before I posted it, but I was just like on a roll and was just going, and then I hit send or comment or whatever it is, however that works, before I had a chance to edit it, because I also have frequently found that when I go back and forth too much, I will accidentally click back or something and lose the entire comment, and it's like, maybe it just wasn't meant to be said. Or maybe it was meant to be said in a different way, and that just wasn't the forum for it. But, like, the one that, oh my God, it drove me nuts as soon as I saw it. I went to say since, S-I-N-C-E, and said sense, S-E-N-S-E. And it's one of those things, like, I find, and that the faster my brain goes when I'm trying to get something out of my system, the more of those kind of things I do, but then I have to revisit them so I can fix them. But if I revisit it too much, then I lose the whole thing, and it's a big ordeal, right? So for writing, this is not what I'm supposed to be writing about, because if I spend too much time reading and rereading and editing and rereading and all that crap, then it's basically keeping me hostage to the story. Whereas this format and being able to talk my way through it and get it out of my system, I can revisit these if I want, and I revisit the stories frequently in other videos, because there are different points that I'm trying to convey through them. But it's not, I will go home and watch this before I post it, but I'm still gonna post it, unless for some reason, like, the audio's all crap and just doesn't work or whatever. And I have discovered that in those times that I cover this little microphone down here, when I'm not paying attention, it seems like this is so stupid and embarrassing. Whatever. My stomach's always made a lot of noises, and I think a lot of it has been... Okay, empathic people are prone to stomach issues, digestive issues, because... I mean, okay, in my lifetime, I was a stress eater for a long time. And, you know, I had that mad Dr. Pepper habit, which I did have one today, but it's kind of my... I set the intention that it will be the last. So my intention setting's going pretty good. And, yeah. Anyway, the stress eating thing, I think it's because... Okay, Bradley Valentine and the thing I watched is like a Mystical Connections thing or whatever back in the fall. A Hay House did this thing and had a bunch of speakers. And when he was speaking, he talked about how we all... Now, he said... I don't remember how he said it exactly because it's been a minute. He was talking about, we all do this. We all have empathic traits in this respect, and we all send basically feelers out from the solar plexus chakra to see what is hurting and what needs healed in others. And I think it's in that, the fact that there's like so much dissonance in how people, there's so much pain that people are feeling, and so much with, like, my mom, who has actively said many times she doesn't need to deal with that, or she doesn't need to write to get it out of her system or whatever, so she's just carrying this stuff around. So I have always been the one trying to heal that for her. I can't do that. That is not for me to do. She has her own lessons. I have my own lessons. And God knows I have basically tried to kill myself over and over in my lifetime trying to heal others' hurts. It does not work. That whole thing started because I was talking about this little microphone down here, and every time I put my finger over the stupid thing and have my elbow resting on my knee, it's like at least once I'm gonna hear my gut in the video. It's like, oh, for God's sake. That's annoying. And it's like amplified surround sound of my belly making noises because digestive issues is what it is. Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking as I was skating today that I think a big purpose for me skating, and not just anything I do when I go out around people right now, I feel like, okay, I've had this thought that's been in my mind that we're in the long game now. And, I pulled cards yesterday, and one of them said that what is built slowly stands longer. Something like that. And that just made me think of all these freaking apartment complexes that are going up right and left around this area. And it's like, the other day we went to that Celebration of Life, and it's like, when did they put that in there? That's a whole freaking apartment complex that was not there the last time I was on this road. And that was probably when I was door dashing. I think I've been up there a couple times since then. None of that time was it there. And then randomly it's there. So it's like, that's when I read that card, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. It's like, that doesn't bode very well. Anyway, so long game. I get all these messages talking about patience, and it's like, the purpose of this journey right now, I'm healing, and my gut's still making noises. Sorry. Is what it is. Today was not a good eating day. Got a message this morning that my grandpa had a rough night, and my aunt wanted to see if I wanted to go get McDonald's breakfast with her and take it over there to them and visit them for a little while. So we did, and that also helped because they're working in front of my grandparents, my aunts, and their next door neighbors' houses had like all their driveways blocked, and luckily ours was not included in that. I don't think they're supposed to do that work there, but I don't know what it is. Something with the power, I think. Or that was the thought, but then there was something about hydro excavating. I don't know what's happening. Just shit's happening. Anyway, we went over to my grandparents' house for breakfast, or with breakfast, and the beverages and all that stuff. So it was not a good eating day, and I was around people with they don't have good boundaries, and I try to do well about being good on being firm with my boundaries, but sometimes, okay, I watched a Nordic Light tarot reading yesterday, and she was talking about there's a toxic energy that it's like it's going around you seeking for weakness so it can latch on and get its hooks back in you. And it's like, I totally felt that with my mom and my grandparents. Yeah. So anyway, run the long game. So patience, right? Okay, so I've talked about the twin flame stuff, and I very much feel like that's still a huge component of my journey, my path. It's the only reason I am here where I am now, y'all. Like, I cannot say, none of this healing that's happened in the past several months would have happened without that. Without that connection and his energy being out there, and it's like a back forth push pull to get both of us to where we're supposed to be before we can find each other in the physical. But I mentioned about that dream that I had back the last week in May, where, okay, that wasn't when okay, so the dream I originally had was in 2020, and back then, big details still remain the same. The focus at that point was my ex was there and I was pissed at him. Then I realized over the past, there's somebody calling me, and I'm not messing with that right now because I messed up my last video last time I did that. Well, not last time. The last time I tried to answer the phone and pause the video, it did not work. Anyway, so dosages now. I would also like to point out my fly went away, and that has not been back after I got past that point. So yeah, oh yeah, the twin flame thing. Oh yeah, the dream. Okay, so the dream. When I had the dream originally in 2020 or 2021, whenever it was, the focus was the anger toward my ex, but it was also noted that my twin and some of his friends were sitting on stools behind the couch, and it's like they were staring in the direction of the TV, but not really. I mean, they were just talking amongst themselves, kind of softly, almost like it was a funeral or something. And I remember this huge, overwhelming sense of anger from the fact that my ex was there for me. And then also being perplexed by the fact that my twin and these other people that he's connected to were there. And my shade tree is the sun is going past the shade tree. Anyway, so that was the first time when I actually had the dream overnight, and I wrote down the details. And then I remembered it back in the fall once I figured out who my twin actually is. And hey, it's the guy on the chair, or one of the guys on the chair. So yeah, there's that. But he appeared in other, like several dreams after that point. And it's kind of funny because somewhere along the way, he had something posted on social media where it looked like somebody was trying to talk to him about a dream they'd had about him, and he was just like, don't care. So anyway, that, I think that's part of my path too, because I've had to see that kind of stuff and realize that it doesn't negate what I'm learning. It's something that if that came up a few years ago with this whole train of thought, just the way that I was on not trusting myself, I would have talked myself out of it rather than, yes, this happened, but that doesn't pertain to me. So yeah. Anyway, the past few months I've realized I can go back into it really easy, and that's kind of trippy. And sometimes it's a matter of just like staring at a picture of this dude and like locking in on his eyes and just whoop, like my head goes elsewhere. It's trippy. So one time, okay, like the first time, the focus was on the anger toward my ex, and they were all talking amongst themselves, and they were aware of me, but they didn't engage with me at all. The next time, I was more focused on realizing they were there, and that's a funky noise that bird is making. I can't even see it. I don't know where it's at. Probably in the tree. Anyway, the next time, I was more interested in them, but my ex was still there, and I was still aware that he was there, and I knew very much that he was not supposed to be there, and it was like he was a leech just latched on to my energy. And then the next time, it's like my twin's talking to me, and he can't see me, can't focus on me, but he's aware that I'm there, and he is talking to me and basically asking me if I need help to get the ex disconnected, I think. And I knew it was something that I still had to work through on my own, which I think is why this has been so important, this whole YouTube thing. Purging it from my system. And so that time, like, he still couldn't see me, but he was talking to me. And then the next time, I was really aware of like his friends' energies too, and realizing that we're all connected and we've all been connected. But I was still talking mostly to him, like he was the main allow me to just words. Who needs them, right? Just trying to talk, no big deal. Like he was the spokesperson, if you will. Which makes sense because he was my direct connection point. Still kind of is in this scenario. So then the next time, I'm still only really talking with him or connecting directly with him, but these other people are also connected to me through him. And so the next time it's kind of like this dreamy feeling, and allow me to drum on the seat while I try to think. Oh, like it's very dreamy, but we're looking at each other, but it's kind of like through a fog. And then in May, the last week of May, it was like the fog had cleared, and he was like staring at me, but almost like through me, like into my soul, kind of a thing, and just very much latched on. And like I mentioned that I write in this journal that is basically written to him, but as I'm processing things as I'm on this journey, and I wrote that I was really interested to see what was going on, or to hear what was going on in his world at this point in time, because that was like full on like staring into my soul. And there's 111. Yeah, I kind of watched it that time, but I was already looking at the 111 up there, and it's like, might as well, So anyway, yeah, that was a thing. Yeah. On the way to walk the dogs today at the cemetery, as we do, I think. Oh, I saw my trip monitor hit 111.1 miles, and then since I somehow managed to get the little tracker thing at like the same point, the odometer also had a 0.1 at the end of it, so there were 5 ones on there too. It's like, hey, there it is. Cool. Yeah. So all that started because I realized that as I've been skating, like today, and there was like this little boy that got so excited that I was on my skates, and he was waving at me and saying hi and wanting to talk about skating, and I couldn't really hear him because I had like my headphone in on one side, and didn't hear what he said, but he was really excited. And it was really cute. And then I was just thinking, it's like a big part of my current purpose as I'm telling these stories and releasing them from my system is just to be seen. And I know that probably sounds like sketchy, chick's full of herself, right? But I think what it is, as I was thinking on this skating journey today, that a big part of this is to come in contact with as many people as possible, just because anybody that you like come into some kind of contact with like that basically establishes cords like connecting you. And I think that's the point of this, because I'm doing this healing for myself. It's releasing things within me, and because of that, for the collective. And one of these days, when we get to the good stuff, although this is kind of fun, I gotta admit, it's growing on me. One of these days, when the big stuff starts to happen, and so I've mentioned here before as well that I think this stays low-key. I'm flying under the radar. Who the hell am I? Who cares, right? One of these days, when I do encounter my twin flame, I think eventually he figures out what I'm doing, or maybe he finds my videos, and he also is like, hey, check this chick out, right? Some kind of form of that. And then suddenly, because he has a platform that I do not, then suddenly people are like, who the hell's this chick? why the hell does he care? And if he cares, why? 444, as I said that. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I think at that point, once it starts to gain some traction on that end, then the people that I've been establishing these chords with are one day going to be like, why is that chick familiar? I mean, I stand out in the crowd. That's what my pattern app says that I'm supposed to do. I was always here. What was that? Uranus conjunct my Venus in Leo, I think, was what said that. I'm meant to be noticed. So I got my colorful hair, I got my facial piercings, all that fun stuff, and I got my I don't know, my weirdness. I mean, the fact that I'm skating over here, that's pretty big. I'm the only person that skates right here right now. Although there has been one other time where this house that is nearby to where I am talking, one of the neighbors to the school, they did have one kid here that was one time on rollerblades, and I think a big sister that was trying to help him, and I've not seen them do that again since. But they tried, so that counts too. Yeah, but I think that's the big point of this. This is the long game. This is me putting these stories out there as I do my own healing, and then one day others come along, perhaps the twin and the connections that I've had and realized have always existed there in this little dreamy place that's actually happening. That's the weird part. And is very interactive, and like I hear a lot of people, okay, Abraham Hicks talks about how we kind of like traverse through different dimensions all throughout the day and we just don't ever realize it, and I think that's what it is. And I think that is that place where we're connected and have always been connected, and like we've all been helping each other do this heavy work of purging toxic energies for the collective, and we've been helping each other. And I've seen, I've mentioned that I'm confident he is in music, and well, I mean, I know who he is and all this stuff, and he's in music, okay? And it was always, that's why I get so hung up on songs and can listen to the same song on repeat for like God only knows how many days before, and not get sick of it, just because it's like I'm connecting to the energy that went into it, and particularly his energy. Not because every song is his, no, that's not it, but because the flow for music, the flow is the divine. And that is our divine access point. So anybody who's ever been in the flow state and put something out there is connecting to the divine. And that is the connection. And, on that whole twin flame thing, the other day I was sitting with this thought of God is love, love is God. And, because I've heard a lot of people in the twin flame community talk about how you have the divine masculine, you have the divine feminine, and then a third energy is created when they come together, and it's basically the God energy, and God is love, love is God. And it's like, hey, there it is right there. That makes sense. Okay, so this is really long. Again, sorry. One of these days, somebody will find this video and actually find this endearing. So even if it takes months or a year or better before that happens, who cares? Here we are. But on that note, I'm going to cut it here and go home and take a shower because I'm offending myself. Not really, but sounds like a entertaining way to end the thing. Whatever. Anyway, as always, I appreciate you whether you made it this far or not, and until the next time, see you later.